a horror franchise known as Outlast was an absolutely terrifying experience. And you guys who have been around my YouTube channel know that I absolutely love the horror genre, whether we're talking about filmmaking or if we're talking about video games. Outlast is one of those games that is an absolutely terrifying single player experience. And I want to talk about in this segment of the show about Outlast and the future of this series and kind of what happened to it, because we haven't seen a new Outlast in quite some time. So let's talk about it. So guys, Outlast, the first one, so Outlast 1, of course, was released in, it was released a number of different times here on different platforms, right? So it was released on Microsoft Windows in 2013, then PlayStation 4 in 2014, Xbox 2014, and then of course on the Nintendo Switch not too long ago, that being in 2018. Now, Outlast was received generally positive reviews with praise for its atmosphere, horror elements, and gameplay. As of October 2016, the game has sold 4 million copies overall. And so that was, about 4 years ago now that we got an update as far as Outlast 1 is concerned about how many copies it sold. I mean, 4 million copies is pretty good for a brand new IP, right? And this was a game that was absolutely, it was terrifying in its own way, and it was only a single player experience. So that was okay, right? You have this single player experience, and back then, it was probably an okay time to do that, even though at the same time, a lot of games were already starting to move into more multiplayer-based games. Then, of course, you kind of move ahead to Outlast 2, which, of course, was released in April of 2017. So we're talking, about 3 years ago, and a little bit over that. Now, Outlast 2 was another single-player experience, and I thought that Outlast 2 was actually even more terrifying than the first one. Obviously, the first game, and I say this a lot, guys, the first game kind of lays a foundation. The second one can obviously do a lot of the things that the first one did right, but can even elaborate on those things. I look at games like Fear. Fear 1, of course, was really terrifying in its own right. And then, of course, the second game came out, and I thought it was even scarier. The same thing with Dead Space. I thought Dead Space 2 was just kind of did the things that the first one did, but did them even better. And so Outlast 2 absolutely crushed it when it came to, in my opinion, kind of just really upping the ante. The game was met with generally favorable reception upon release, with praise going towards the graphics, sound design, and atmosphere. Criticisms were reserved for the gameplay design and perceived difficulty. So yeah, so those were the couple of things that obviously there was some criticism for with the gameplay design, which I can somewhat agree. But what happened to Outlast, as a franchise? So obviously we haven't seen a game since April of 2017. Obviously they brought the first game to the Nintendo Switch in 2018, but if you look at as far as the sequel's concerned, which has been a lot of talk about this, Outlast 3 was announced in December of 2017, though no time frame or target platforms were confirmed. During this announcement, Red Barrel said that because they could not easily add downloadable content for Outlast 2, due to its structure, they have a smaller separate project related to Outlast that will release before Outlast 3. Then, of course, the Outlast Trials is an upcoming multiplayer horror game that was teased in October of 2019 and is not a direct sequel to Outlast 2. It's about test subjects in a mysterious Cold War experiment and set in the same universe of the previous games. Red Barrel's co-founder, David Shatnoff, said the proof of concept is now complete and the game's team is now in development mode. There is currently no release date for the Outlast Trials. So, look, Outlast, guys, came out, and I think that due to some of the reception on Outlast 2, that being like the gameplay design and the difficulty and things of that nature, a lot of people were kind of saying, well, do they really need to make another one? I think that the perfect direction for Outlast to go at this point was a multiplayer experience, because the first two games were just single-player experiences, and I've always said this, guys, when you don't have other modes other than that of like a single-player mode, it doesn't keep players coming back. You might play the campaign a couple of times through, and then after that, you might move on to another game. But with multiplayer experiences within video games, obviously that brings players back, or at least like co-op experiences and stuff, bring players back. Multiplayer for the Outlast trials, I think this could be absolutely awesome. This sounds like something that kind of reminds me maybe like a Dead by Daylight. Something along those lines might be quite interesting. We don't really know a lot of information about the Outlast trials, but obviously it looks like Outlast, these main games, are being put on a brief hiatus, and they're all on board with a multiplayer horror game that, of course, we will see at some point in the future. I think the Outlast trials very well could be something pretty special, though, from a multiplayer experience. Now, the question is it going to be a free-to-play experience? Is it going to be one of those experiences where you're going to have to pay for? Most likely, we're going to have to pay for it, but I think that this is the perfect direction for the Outlast franchise to go, because you've made 2 games up to this point that were single-player experiences, and now you're going to be able to expand to multiplayer, kind of really quench a lot of people's thirst for just wanting more Outlast and being able to like connect with that franchise more and more, and then they can kind of work on Outlast 3, and maybe Outlast 3 will be a full package, that being like a campaign, multiplayer, and maybe some co-op modes. That would be something really interesting. I think this is a perfect direction because Outlast 2 does have some, a sour taste in some people's mouths. I thought it was really good overall, but the Outlast trials could be something really special. We're going to be talking more about the Outlast trials here on the YouTube channel, but I think what really happened, guys, to Outlast up to this point is that the main story is in a kind of a back burner state or a limbo state at this point while they're working on the multiplayer experience, that being the Outlast trials. I do think, though, they will come back to Outlast and the Outlast, franchise, that being like Outlast 3, and continuing the story moving forward. It'll be really interesting to see what happens. I would love to hear from all of you guys. What do you guys think about the Outlast franchise? Are you guys excited about the Outlast trials? Let me know in the comment section below what your guys' thoughts are on a multiplayer experience for Outlast. And for more content and videos based around the Outlast trials and Outlast as a franchise, stay here with Zero TV.